What's up everyone, Michael here with another topic video. Today we're going to be talking about how Psychonauts 2 is going to Starbreeze for their publishing rights, which is a bit interesting considering Psychonauts 2 had a big and successful Kickstarter. However, they obviously haven't been getting enough money to actually fund the game development because it actually looks fairly decent, I'm going to say. And so they're actually looking to Starbreeze, which used to be a developer, but recently broke away from its publisher chains and is now actually publishing other titles. And so they're going to be investing quite a bit of money, and we'll talk about what that all means and my kind of concerns with that as we go into this video. So anyways, right off the bat, game in the background is Borderlands 2. I didn't know what else to play, quite frankly, and I can use that as comparison later on, so that's what we're going to do. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about this topic. Psychonauts 2 looks sort of interesting. If you don't know what Psychonauts 2 is, basically it is the sequel to Psychonauts 1, as the name would suggest. And basically, it is a game to where it's kind of like a classical action-adventure platformer. And the first one was actually really, really good, which is one of the reasons why people are excited for the second one. Because, you know, if we could get more of what was in the first game, except, you know, modernized up and everything like that, it would be great to see the, you know, sort of a return to form for that genre, because we haven't really had a lot in that genre to begin with. Now, there's obviously a lot of indies coming up, but they're promising that Psychonauts 2 is going to be more on the AAA side of things, and this kind of goes into why they kind of need a publisher. Now, AAA development is extremely expensive. It takes a lot of money and a lot of art assets and a lot of workers to kind of get it going, and development cycles can be fairly long, especially now in the modern day of games. But this is also where the concern comes from. Now let's talk about Starbreeze for a second, because Starbreeze was originally a developer. They've been a developer for quite a long time, and they've had a lot of games under several different publishers. That said, recently, within the last 2 years, they actually broke away from their publisher chains with Payday 2, which is probably their most popular title. They looked at it and they're like, yeah, you know what, we have this big debacle to where they had to have microtransactions in the game and everything like that, and they ended up mostly pinning that on the publisher. And they're like, hey, our publisher wants us to do this, and so we're kind of in a situation to where now we can't really do much. But they ended up breaking away, removing most of those microtransactions and moving them back into the DLC thing, which I'm not a fan of their DLC models, but regardless, they kind of support it, and it seems to work for them. And so basically now they're actually publishing several different games. Now, the only game I think that's actually released that is not on their own underneath their Starbreeze title, I believe, is Dead by Daylight, which is not particularly well received. It's okay received. But they are looking at publishing different games. Now, Psychonauts 2 ends up being hugely successful. This would actually be a great thing for Starbreeze, because it would be a AAA game under their name, and they'd be able to tell other people like, hey, look at this other game we published, even though really it doesn't mean anything. Now, my concerns come in two ways. One, the cuts that Starbreeze is looking to take out of Psychonauts 2's kind of sales window. Now, basically, from the reports that I was reading, it said that they would be taking up to 85% until they actually got their investment back, which they are investing $8 million into the title. And obviously, a publisher also supports things like distribution, some advertising, and whatnot. So basically, they'd be taking 85% of the cut until that $8 million has been refunded. And then after that, they're taking up to 60% back on that. Now, that's not completely outrageous depending on the sort of studio and publisher relation. There are some AAA games that will take about that much, if not more. However, it is kind of large for more of the indie space, which is where I kind of see Psychonauts 2 kind of being in. It is more of an indie or sort of niche title, and so this is actually going to be a huge deficit to the publisher, or not the publisher, but the developer, while being a huge benefit to the publisher. Which kind of has me concerned, because if Psychonauts 2 ends up being really, really good, this could end up hurting them in the future and make it so that they'd have to go back to crowdfunding or have to go to another publisher to get another game. And I'm a strong advocate for kind of self-publishing. I think that self-publishing, such as Dirty Bomb, recently went on to their own self-publishing, which I'll be doing a video on once their servers transition over. I think it's a great idea, because publishers don't really offer a lot in this modern age except for financial backing. And, you know, Psychonauts 2 had $4 million in its Kickstarter, which, yes, I know is not all that much when you go into AAA development, but at the same time, it is not an insignificant amount of money, and I kind of wish the game would have been developed with that budget in mind. Now, this isn't the first time that Double Fine, which is the developer of Psychonauts 2, has kind of thought that they had enough money and then ended up not. So it's kind of good that they are not making that same mistake again, to where they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try and make this game under this budget and then absolutely fail and have to start up a second Kickstarter or something along those lines. So at least they're not doing that. But it also concerns me because having a publisher means that you have someone above you that is able to make design decisions. In the example of Payday 2, which was under Starbreeze, Starbreeze developed the game, they had the situation where the game was not making as much money as their publisher saw fit, or at least from what they reported, which meant that basically they had to end up, introducing other ways to make money off of the game. Now, the way the developer was doing it for a very long time is introducing massive amounts of DLC. Now, I'm not a big fan of Payday 2's DLC model, and I'm afraid that since they're still with that model, they removed things like microtransactions, which was supposedly imposed by the publisher, and they said they were able to get away from that because they split from their publisher. This also runs into a situation to where I have a feeling that even though they're not, they were able to listen to their community and be like, oh yeah, this doesn't work, this microtransaction stuff doesn't work, it doesn't mean that they won't try it again. And it also doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the best outfit, because they could be like, hey, look at Payday 2, DLC's working, why don't you do that with Psychonauts 2? And I really, really, really want Psychonauts 2 to be a good standalone experience. I don't want to have to go and buy like 10 DLCs to get the full experience out of a classic platformer. That's one of the things I enjoyed about older style platformers. I'm okay with DLC when there's a core game involved. There's let's say Ori and the Blind Forest is an absolutely phenomenal game. I wish that game had DLC because, the experience that it contains is absolutely fantastic, but I want more. I want more of it. But at the same time, a lot of modern games are not developed with a core experience in mind, and instead they're like, oh yeah, it'll be kind of future-proof because it has DLC plans and all this other type of stuff, which is super, super unfortunate. Now, one thing that kind of, suggests towards that is in the announcement, they mention the words of, oh, well, this will, Starbreeze is a perfect kind of publisher for the title because they will ensure, longevity to the support of the game, which makes me wonder, if the game is successful, are they looking at DLC or are they already looking at DLC? And this could just mean that, they're talking about, longevity of the servers, maybe they have like leaderboard systems and things like that, or maybe, bug fixes and stuff like that, which that is primarily what people would mean when they say stuff like that. But at the same time, in the current market, I'm not 100% sure. And it only puts more skepticism into Psychonauts 2. Now, Tim Schafer, is that how you say his name? I don't really know. I've mostly only read his name, but I don't really have a lot of trust in him. He's said some questionable things, and Double Fine themselves has not really earned a lot of trust, and therefore, I kind of think that it might end up being a DLC thing. Now, obviously, I don't know for sure, and I could just be overspeaking off of my skepticism here, but that kind of actually has me worried. Also, the fact that they are kind of running into a situation where they need an $8 million investment from a publisher also kind of suggests that the $4 million goal of the other thing might not have been nearly as maybe undercut as much as they wanted, or maybe they are kind of, spending more funds than they used to, just like their other titles as well. Like they've had early access titles that end up being absolutely abominable because they don't even reach close to their expectations. They had, what was it called? It was called Broken Age, I believe, to where it was like, yeah, we're going to have this big advanced story and everything like that. They released one part and they're like, oh yeah, we can't fund the other parts. Let's start another Kickstarter. Let's try and get this one funded. And it took them forever to get that out, So I don't know how well they're doing on the business side. Now, obviously, hopefully the game comes out good. And hopefully it does really, really well. And hopefully, it comes back and proves that a genre is viable without a bunch of the modern BS that gaming has to go through. There's a lot of classic indie titles that I absolutely love. Shantae is one that I've been getting into again recently. Like, they're just excellent platformers. And they are contained experiences. They had a Kickstarter for the third game, which I haven't played yet. But it is supposedly really, really good. And it's just a solid platformer all around. And I can see Kickstarter being great for that. But if, these notable, developers go onto Kickstarter and they expect to get more from publishers, because this is not the first game, Psychonauts 2 is not the first game to actually have it so that they start a Kickstarter and then go to a publisher for the rest of their funding. It would be unfortunate if they looked at it as just a way to gather interest and then try and, make a game with a publisher rights instead, because one of the benefits to Kickstarter is that they'd be able to own their own title. Now, Starbreeze has mentioned as a sort of closing note that the Double Fine will be keeping the rights to Psychonauts, so it's not like an IP transfer thing, which is probably one of the reasons why the rates are so high in their publishing kind of, scheme, as in, 85% is kind of ridiculous for a while, but, I mean, game engines can take up to 10% as well, like Unreal Engine 4, stuff like that, they take up to 10% to 25% depending on your model when you end up publishing game under it until it gets its, kind of payment and stuff like that. So it's not uncommon for the release window to be heavily charged. It's the after the fact kind of charges that I'm a little bit worried about. And, hopefully it works out. I'm not too excited for Psychonauts 2. I'm more excited for the concept of it. I really want the genre to come back because it is one of my favorite genres. I love platformers and I love action-adventure games. And so seeing both of those combined into a title that was actually really, really interesting back in the day, seeing a sequel to it would be really, really good. But obviously, can't really speak to the quality. I've seen some of the art videos, and it looks beautiful. I love the way that they're kind of going with the art style. It still looks like Psychonauts 1, but in a modern age, and they're doing a really, really good job of giving it a good feel. So I'm excited for it. But at the same time, I'm not. I'm super skeptical. That's what I am. I'm excited, but super, super skeptical. Skeptical beyond the point to where I'm going to be like, I'm going to pick it up definitely. It's more like, I'm going to watch it, but I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm going to buy this game definitely. It's going to be one of those situations where I'm going to wait. And yeah. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching for this topic video talking about Psychonauts 2 being under Starbreeze for their publishing stuffs. Hopefully the game's good. And it might not be, and that would suck, but I have a feeling it'll be okay. I mean, I'm seeing how skeptical I've been over the while making this video. I'm just like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be so skeptical. I should be more positive, I should be more positive and be like, it's going to be good, but at the same time, I don't know, it's going to be good. But anyways, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this one. You can also check out my impressions reviews if you want more in-depth and more thought-out videos based on a certain specific game. Recently, I did a review for Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth 1 and the review for Mega Dimension Neptunia V2, which is a later game in the series. Is actually coming out very, very soon. It was going to release today, but I kind of ran into some issues with recording it, so that's how that goes. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Also, if you see any news, make sure to tell me over on the Twitter. You can actually forward topics and stuff like that if you want to hear my thoughts or maybe some industry analysis on other types of things, such as maybe free-to-play stuff. I'm working on a video for free-to-play models in general and talking about why it sucks and why it doesn't, and that was actually a topic suggested to me by a friend and a viewer. And so if you want to suggest me topics, hit me up on the Twitter or in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. I'm really good at getting headshots in this game. Ah!